Production funding for Arts Upload has been provided in part by Francis Family Foundation, Hall Family Foundation, the H&R Block Foundation, Courtney S. Turner Charitable Trust, John W. and FEE Spies Memorial Trust, Muriel McBrien Kaufman Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Randy Mason.
And I'm Maris Aylward.
Our show's called Arts Upload, and you know, since we realized that winemaking is an art,
we've set up shop at the Belvoir Winery in Liberty.
With stories about fractals and a man named Frank Higgins, that is.
Also Peter Pan and complex cakes. It's all ahead on The Upload.
In just about a week, the madness known as Kansas City's Fringe Fest will soon be upon us.
Over the course of 10 days, dozens of original plays and stage productions will be unleashed upon a theater-going audience that's been steadily expanding.
And while you can't say it's because of Frank Higgins, you could argue that his influence will be on display in many ways during that time.
As a nationally known playwright himself and professor at UMKC, Frank has helped open the doors of creativity for a new generation of theater artists.
So whose idea was it to change? Ours. And what do I tell my board?
We made a mistake.
You mean I made a mistake?
In general, once people get up on their feet, I like to go away and then come back when we're going to do a run-through, so that the actors and director don't feel like the playwright's looking over their shoulder, watching them do their work, because when I was writing the play, nobody was standing in my office looking over my shoulders.
You're not sending me to Timbuktu.
There are consequences.
I'm in a custody fight. You think I'm gonna
I was in the corporate world for a very long time. And yeah, I remember conference room settings like this.
So now I'm Nixon? No. My board will push me
I
out.
think he's captured how women go after one another's feelings. They'll go for the jugular.
Part of what this play is about, it deals with the externals of when Coca-Cola changed their flavor, to New Coke. But underneath it, what it's about is a play about loyalty between these people.
Big tycoon wannabe, big Malcolm X wannabe.
The playwright is not usually present to ask questions. You just kind of have to make up what you think would make sense to motivate what you're doing. So it's definitely helpful.
No, but you haven't heard this. No matter what happens.
The taste test is chock full of historical facts that Higgins turned up in his research. Not so factual might be 3 women in such powerful posts in the mid-1980s, but hey, that's the playwright's prerogative. As is tinkering with the script's mechanics, even as opening night is barreling towards them.
We needed these words to cover a transition. During a break, we came up with this. I still don't have a soundtrack, but I have a namesake, and she's brilliant.
And that's your exit point up there? All through the process, we've been adding new things and taking them away when he realized, oh, that didn't work like I thought it was going to.
Everything I've done has been for you.
And he's very receptive to gauging that dialogue about what am I missing here.
You're not sending me to Timbuktu.
There are consequences.
A soda pop marketing debacle is just one of many topics touched upon in a body of work that stretches across more than 30 years now, not counting the poetry. Early on, The Next Big Thing, based in part on Frank's minor league baseball experiences. Then came The Sweet By and By, sprung from a conversation overheard during a West Virginia pit stop. Gwyneth Paltrow, Blythe Danner, and Judge Reinhold starred in its premiere. There have been plays about guns, miracles, Jesse James, and even a spider. But the most successful by far has been Black Pearl Sings, inspired by the field recordings that Alan Lomax gathered across the South in the 1930s. Once again, though, Higgins wrote the roles for women. While it's been staged by theaters from coast to coast, it hadn't played Kansas City until this spring.
Black Pearl Sings, I've been very lucky. It's had lots of productions. After my mother passed away, I mean, there was a lot of debt, and that helped, take that debt away. which would not have happened. I mean, if I was writing poetry and if I were not a full-time college teacher or whatever. It's great when the awards come, it's great when the productions come, but that's not what it's about.
Okay, if that's the mathematical formula for your play is not going to be any good. Here is the formula for good playwriting, is 2 + 2 = X, and you leave it up to people to fill in the blank and make some decision about something. So let me just ask you the question.
The thing that I try to talk to with students that I think is really important is write the thing you can't not write. In a sense, it's not that you find the play finds you.
Here's the rubber band question. So did you get a sense, did you, the author, get a sense of this as we were going through the play? Stretching the rubber band.
I always tell people I took a left turn in grad school, and that left turn was named Frank Higgins. His class was just so dynamic, and he understands, inherently the dramatics of the classroom structure as well as the dramatic structure of plays. He's the Pied Piper of playwriting.
That turn Nick made at UMKC led him in a different direction and into a whole new career. He's now the marketing director for the Unicorn Theater. In 2012, a short play he wrote called Unnamed Lands made it to the finals of the American College Theater Festival. The following year, Nick saw his first Fringe Festival production come to life. Now work is getting underway on Ace of Leaves, one of 4 shorts that comprise Alphabet Soup, coming soon to City Stage at Union Station.
You have to follow your artistic voice and speak the truth that's in you. And for me, that's been about writing LGBT dramas.
Do you think you're better than me?
Frank helped me get into Fringe, and now that I'm here, I'm not going away.
I think the main thing that Frank has taught me is that, like, if I write something and I'm willing to show it to somebody, someone will want to do something with it. But you've got to kind of put yourself out there and keep, asking people to look at your stuff and give you the feedback.
So when she gets married, her name will be Marcy Darcy.
That's awful.
I know.
I was just writing a scene for playwriting class, and people responded well to it and said that they would be interested to find out more about these characters.
I could filibuster.
I started kind of exploring further and adding things, and over the course of probably 1.5 years is how long it actually took me to write all the scenes of it.
Spending some time in a real-life teacher's lounge gave Stephanie some of the fodder for her play about the age-old conflict between high ideals and career advancement. Higgins' playwriting class helped with a lot of the practical stuff.
You have to make time and you have to write. You have to force yourself to sit down and write and finish it and block out the distractions. He gives us a lot of good tips for ways to do that.
I've never had a teacher who's talked to you for 3 hours about your play just on your own. It's just like going on and getting into the meat of it.
What happens in this scene?
That's what I loved about the MFA program at UMKC. There were so many of us poets and nonfiction writers and playwrights learning from each other and very supportive, and Frank was definitely at the center of that for me.
Okay, I'll just say Karen's class.
When he's not the man at the blackboard, around a table or in a seat watching one of his plays being produced, Frank Higgins is simply the man in the Van Gogh Yellow House, surrounded by the artists and icons that inspire him, doing the kind of work that still brings him joy.
If you write a poem or if you write a short story and somebody doesn't like it, it's kind of abstract. You hear about it. But if you're in the theater standing at the back and they don't like it, I mean, if it's a big theater and there's 400 rear ends moving at the same time because people are bored, that's a message.
You know the Chinese symbol for crisis?
If something goes well, like for example, just this sound, so whatever it is, there's some surprise in the plot. That might sound minor, but if you've got 400 or 500 people who all go at the same time, I mean, that's a fantastic feeling, like, it worked.
Our next story here on Arts Upload brings up a couple of questions. Okay. The first is, what's a fractal?
That's easy. They're infinitely complex patterns which are self-similar across different scales.
Wow, okay. The second is, what happens when an award-winning composer with an engineering background hooks up with an international community of artists using fractals for animation.
Yeah, that's a little tougher. Luckily, producer Ashley Holcroft has the answer, showing us how science and art cohabitate in something called Once and Future Cities.
It's a first Friday in Kansas City, and these folks have come to the comforts of the Gottlieb Planetarium for a tour of a unique universe. But tonight, this isn't a trek through the magnificent celestial bodies held aloft within the firmament. No, this is a tour of a different sort of universe, one made of computer code, knit together by the simple wonder of fractal equations. Turns out, the properties of fractals have been all around us since the dawn of time, as in the repetitive self-similar branching of a tree, or in the redundant perfection of a snowflake. The mathematical possibilities of this omnipresent patterning was first recognized by Gottfried Leibniz in the 17th century. However, it wasn't visualized until 1904, when the Koch snowflake was devised. And in the 60s, this infinitely large or small theorem got a psychedelic overhaul when the Mandelbrot set was concocted, which assigned a color to the formula's expansion or contraction. And it's been less than a decade since technology caught up with fractals, enabling these magnificent universes, made with just a few hundred lines of computer code, to stretch across a digital canvas. In 2014, the elegant formula took another huge leap, thanks to this man, award-winning composer, director, and curator of Once and Future Cities, Bentley Owsley.
Once and Future Cities is I call it a fractal journey, because we're moving through these virtual landscapes that are created purely through mathematics. When we render these immersive images, we don't start with any CGI models, we don't start with any textures. There is no visual input to this at all. It is all formulas.
The we he's referring to is an elite team of fractal artists from around the world, brought together by a website that hatched a bold idea.
If you go out to shadertoy.com, you see a little panel, and that is your window into that universe. And these universes are so intriguing, my thought was, what if that universe was all around you? And you can do that in the planetarium.
Which might sound like quite the leap, but not for avid stargazer and Casey Astronomical Society member Owsley, who, since 2004, has logged countless hours under this very special dome.
When we came into the planetarium, there was no astronomical content that was currently being shown there. It wasn't even called a planetarium, they called it a city dome.
After a partnership was forged between the ASKC and the then cash-strapped Union Station, they went to work finding a cost-effective fix for the planetarium's dilapidated equipment and ended up inventing, engineering, and programming the system lovingly known as BRT, which now takes audiences on daily voyages through the lush argosies of the cosmos. So, the idea of creating a 40-minute-long planetarium fractal show was hardly far-fetched, but that's not to say that it was entered into lightly.
The first thing you do is you figure, what's your stretch goal? You know, and my stretch goal was, well, here's the 6 guys that I think are probably the best in the world at doing this, and I got 5 of them. Some of these people, I was so intimidated by the level of what they do. When I started, I was a little hesitant to contact them. I thought, are they really going to be interested in doing this? But they are not just great artists, but they're great people too. What I wanted to do was connect on an emotional level a lot more than an intellectual level on this, which is kind of strange for a mathematically derived form. But the fractal artists, they have figured out how to do that, how to take a purely technical art form and then create something that's kind of emotionally moving.
But the emotional underpinnings of Once and Future Cities are more than merely visual. The audible aspects are just as compelling. In 2008, Bentley won the grand prize in a competition held by Warner Brothers for Best Fan-Generated Track to mark the re-release of Blade Runner. And it was that cut that turned into something unexpected.
I kept getting, hey, you should do something with this. So I had a score in search of a film. When I saw these fractals, I thought that they had kind of the visual movement and energy that I was looking for and the emotion that I was looking for in some of these pieces.
The blissful union of fractals and score has been met with great enthusiasm, both locally and internationally from sister planetariums. After the lights come up, Bentley fields a Q&A about the project.
What experience do I have? I have 7 months of experience. What do you mean? This is a new art form. I'm like a veteran in doing this. I have a computer background.
So, in the evening's final moments, this friend of fractals soldiers on, wholeheartedly extending an invitation to join the expedition to these worlds unknown.
You can go out to shadertour.com. Not only can you see the animation, but right by it is the code. And not only that, you can change the code and then re-execute it right there. I mean, it's designed for people to play with. It's designed for people to go in and make subtle changes in it and see if it works. Most likely, it's gonna blow up. But you know what? Refresh your web page. It goes back right like it was.
Seems only fitting that animation might move forward here in the city where a certain mouse helped a certain empire get started.
It's also fitting that on a hot summer day, we're thinking about drinking. Wine, I mean.
Belvoir Winery is the result of its founder's dream. Dr. Bean wanted to see the old Oddfellows home here on the edge of Liberty active again, so about 15 years ago, he and his wife started planting vineyards.
They've got Norton, Chambourcin, Golden Muscat, and Vignoles, and of course, tastings of the 8 wines those grapes produce.
Belvoir means beautiful view in French, and it's no surprise that the 170-acre setting is in high demand for weddings and other big occasions.
Which brings us to our next story. It's all about cake.
And how to make the kind of desserts you've probably never even seen before.
Usually when I'm out and about, I'll see a pattern or a design and instantly think of a cake. It's very weird, I know. When I began, it wasn't for the love of baking, it was for the love of the artistry. I saw things on TV that I thought were amazing. I thought, wow, maybe I could do something like that. Once I saw what was happening and what was being created from an edible medium, I wanted to try it. I wanted to see what it was all about. And once I got involved in it, I just kept getting deeper and deeper and wanting to try new things and really testing myself and testing my abilities and pushing myself. I didn't have an instructor or a teacher telling me how to do things. I just kind of had to figure it out on my own. I use tools that you wouldn't think are made for cake use, such as clay tools, razor blades, scissors, paintbrushes. These are all things that I've had to learn along the way. I haven't had any kind of training or any classes. I just kind of learned along the way. One of the mediums that I use to create some of the things that I do is fondant. I prefer fondant just because it dries nicely. The feeling I want from it, I want it to be kind of like a clay. I want it to be able to dry well. Baking is definitely an art in itself. It's science. My first attempt, it's not a very good one. It was a disaster. I baked a nice 2-tiered topsy-turvy cake. This cake was so dry, but the decorations were pretty cool. I felt like I needed to really spend some time in the baking world and really get this down. If I want to have a serious business, I need to offer my clients a good product. Not only should it look good, but it should taste good too. So I began researching recipes, and through trial and error, lots of error. I've had cakes collapse on me. I've had cakes melt on me. I've had heads fall off. I've had all kinds of things, but I've learned a lesson every single time something bad happened. Basically, from sketch to my final product, I'll take a look at what they're interested in and basically put together a custom design based on what they want. The cool thing about my type of artistry is that you can't keep it forever. You have to eat it. Most people say they don't want to eat it because it's so beautiful, because it is a piece of art. They want to show it off to their friends. They want it sitting on their counter as a display. Cake design is definitely a labor of love because it really does take a lot of time and practice and patience. And creativity. You can't go anywhere without any kind of creativity. I would love to have my own shop. I'd love to teach classes. I'm very interested in showing people what I can do and helping them improve in their artistry as well. I was scared when I first started, but I took the plunge and I just kept going and going. But now I feel like I've gotten to a point where my art can kind of speak for itself.
This week, we're enjoying the vintage charm of the Belvoir Winery. We do want to point out that it seems to be a hotbed of paranormal activity.
Yeah, over the years, these buildings served as, among other things, a hospital, and even today there are reports of unusual activity in the rooms and the hallways here.
Our final story this week isn't about ghosts, but it does ask us to take a flight of imagination.
It's a behind-the-scenes look at the making of Finding Neverland that tells the story of the Scotsman who gave us Peter Pan.
You know, the story of Neverland has to be magical in any way you tell it. Like if you're telling the story of Peter Pan or the creation of Peter Pan, I mean, there's so many intrinsic magical elements to the story that you have to bring those to the table and bring them to life.
Broadway and television star Jeremy Jordan plays J.M. Barrie, whom we meet in early 20th century England as a struggling playwright. Jordan says it's a role unlike any he's done before.
Dance with me, Porthos! I'm just running and jumping and breathing and completely exhausted. It's more vocally taxing than anything I've ever done. I'm just speaking and yelling and belting and singing and everything that you could possibly imagine. And then on top of that, it's emotionally exhausting.
Beauty and love there forever and eternity.
Barrie produced Peter Pan after meeting the recently widowed Sylvia Davies and her 4 boys, the eventual inspiration behind the Lost Boys of Neverland. Barrie and the family became fast friends, and the world became their playground as they reveled in their own imagination.
They sort of forced him to turn his whole outlook on writing the world upside down in a great way, and he was able to take risks and go places that he probably never was able to go because he had sort of suppressed that child inside of him for so long.
Laura Michelle Kelly plays Sylvia Davies. She benefited as much from Barrie as he did from the family. Playing with Barrie and the children provided a welcome distraction for Davies, who had recently lost her husband to cancer and needed an escape.
She's got 4 children and she's lost her husband in a horrific way. And when we meet her, she's holding it together frantically for the boys. And it's been a bit of time, but there's still pain there.
But remember what you promised me, that we would stand together, that we'd get through this together, yes?
And she meets a man who makes her children laugh, which opens up the door to new possibilities in her life again.
But with a little imagination, like a trip up the Amazon River with Teddy Roosevelt,
look out! It's a waterfall!
Her troubles started to melt away. One of the most exciting parts of the show, says Kelly, is working with the 4 child actors who play her sons.
These kids are amazing. I'm always astounded with what they can do. And they're all younger than I was when I started. And they're geniuses, and they're teaching me so much.
And with these young actors leading the way, the possibilities on stage seem endless. But there's more to the show than just imagination and fun, says Kelly. It reminds us that a little play goes a long way.
I think the best way to deal with tragedy is to get in touch with your inner child. And I think it's a good lesson for most people to, okay, here's a door, and here's how you can get back there.
You act like you really don't care, but how does it feel to be floating on air?
Looks like we've flown through another edition of Arts Upload.
Thanks to the Belvoir Winery for letting us sample some of the wares and look over some of the art they put on display in this historic structure.
You know, next week the bees will be buzzing with a sculptor who actually incorporates them into his art.
Also, painter Kwanzaa Humphrey. Till then, I'm Mary Saylor.
And I'm Randy Mason. Cheers.
Production funding for Arts Upload has been provided in part by Francis Family Foundation, Hall Family Foundation, the H&R Block Foundation, Courtney S. Turner Charitable Trust, John W. and FEE Spies Memorial Trust, Muriel McBrien Kaufman Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.